Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Long time no see. Trust me, I know. Anyways, my name is Nod and I am so happy you're here today. Thank you for coming back to my channel, or if you're new, I do make videos on commentary on different subjects that just seem important to me or feel like talking about. I also make gaming commentary or gaming related videos, and I plan to upload music covers, whether it's the piano or clarinet in the future, so I hope you can look forward to that. I do want to say that today's video is a long form one, and as you can tell by the title, it's about racism in the gaming community, and it's mostly dovetailing off of the last long form video I uploaded about saying the N-word as a mixed person, but this is specifically saying the N-word in the gaming community or any kind of racial slur used in the gaming community. That being said, this is a disclaimer to let you know this is going to be a video that includes topics of racism, prejudice. It might include some profanity as well, or just using it as an example. Definitely took a lot of time to research this topic actually, and that's one of the reasons why this video took so long for me to finally upload. That plus the fact that I just moved. But anyways, a lot of it is research-based. A good part of it is also based off of my opinion as well. I will say personally for myself, I haven't done too much online gaming. I've dabbled a little bit into League of Legends and Guild Wars, probably some other stuff that I probably didn't really play that much, and I personally have not faced any online racism or prejudice, but I know of people who have, and it hurts me that they've had to deal with that. And this video has to do with racism and video games, and two things I'm very passionate about, so that's why I'm here to talk about it with you all today. And before I jump into the video, I'm just gonna break it down a little bit for you. We're gonna talk about 3 different subtopics. The overall topic is obviously racism or racial slurs in the gaming community. We want to talk a little bit about the origins of using the N-word or just racial slurs in the community. We're going to talk about a little bit about the intentions of when people do use these words in the community. And lastly, we want to talk about the impact of using racial slurs or any kind of profanity in the gaming community as well. So for the first topic, we're going to be talking about the origins of profanity or even just the N-word in the gaming community. And let me tell you, when your girl researched, she really researched, I have the proof right here. So I'm going to start off by asking you guys a question. How do you think it started? Where are its earliest findings, or where do you think the earliest findings of the N-word in the gaming community started for you? First, we'll start with the earliest findings of racial discrimination or profanity against Black people as a whole, or just racism as a whole in the US. The origin of the N-word, for example, dates back as far as the 1850s, specifically regarding the USA's history and how it's been built on the backs of slaves. No shade, no tea, but you know, actual shade and tea. And we see here in 2009, according to the National Public Diary Group, there's an estimated 169.9 million people playing video games in the US. As of 2019, 2/3 of gamers have been harassed. In total, 65% experienced physical threats, stalking, and sustained harassment. The use of the N-word and the controversy surrounding it dates back as far as 2012. Rather, as soon as 2012, if you get my point there. The fact that it's been a little bit over a century since the US has been introduced to the N-word, and then we're still seeing the use of the N-word of negative connotation in the gaming community as soon as 2012. You would think in over 100 years we'd be able to improve away from that specific word. But obviously in gaming, it's still very present. And sadly, and obviously in the USA, it's still a very present word too. Very present and very negative, and people still use it to hurt others. That being said, over 10 years ago in 2009, video games were very much speculated. Not that it isn't now, but back in 2009 when GTA was still very big, and video games are still a rather new concept. It just started like in the 70s or 80s or something like that. Keep in mind that GTA specifically, you know, having gun violence, nudity, profanity, a bunch of just unrealistic, well, realistic things in the setting, but unrealistic in the fact that you wouldn't want, you know, if your child is playing this game, you wouldn't expect them to go and do these things, even though there were cases of children and people playing GTA going out to do these things because they did it in the video game. It's fair to say that people were questioning gameplay. They were questioning gameplay and content and its oddly addicting tendencies. When gaming first occurred, it introduced something called identity tourism. As you know, people would use gaming as their escape from reality, to kind of unwind, decompress, or take out some anger if they needed to in a virtual world versus in the physical world. Unfortunately, there's something called identity tourism, where people will use playful possibilities of gaming to visit different racial and gender identities online as well. It's fair to say that systemic racism has also grown from this. In light of social and racial injustice protests that we have experienced in the summer of 2021 in light, or maybe not in light, of George Floyd's murder by the Minneapolis Police Department, we have seen not only an influx of advocates, but also an influx of neo-Nazis and prideful white supremacists, or white terrorists as I like to put them. Unfortunately, after those protests began in May of 2020, it kind of made things seem worse. Like, things kept progressively getting worse throughout the year, probably until the holiday season where things kind of calmed down a little bit. Unfortunately, there is an occurrence in June of 2020 where white supremacists use non-publisher supported modifications where some players introduced characters dressed as the KKK in a game called Red Dead Redemption. And they would do this in Red Dead Redemption 2, which is an online game, basically a space in an online gaming community that's being played live, where you can chat with others, just like you would in any other kind of online community. Not only would these white supremacists choose game mods that would present them as KKK members, they would use that to their advantage to use racial slurs against assumed players of color. They would use racial slurs, call them racist names such as the N-word, and send hateful messages and even death threats to other players of color. So that's a little bit about background of the use of profanity and racial slurs in the gaming community, and then just a bit of an example of why and how it's still present very much today. I cry. That's really disappointing. In this next subtopic, I want to talk a little bit about intention. When I say intention, it means basically how, you know, when you're mad at someone, maybe it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, parent, or something, you might say something that's really hurtful and, you know, it might really hurt someone's feelings. And even though you care and love about this person a lot, you say this thing out of spite or in the moment of emotions and anger. The reason I bring this up is that it seems that there's a trend of gamers getting really passionate about games such as Call of Duty or Battlegrounds, where they get very angry and they rage specifically. And I will say, based off of my experience, League of Legends is a toxic ass game. Like, no one really got on me because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But I have seen people be extremely mean to others playing online in that game. And I think part of it is because it's a free game to access online for anyone. Yeah, people use the excuse of raging in games or rage quitting even to use horrible language against people. They take that advantage, especially maybe they're closeted racists. Maybe they start thinking, oh, I'm raging, I can use this moment to use this racist word and probably get away with it. Because unfortunately, a lot of players of color or gamers of color on the internet, they're kind of used to this. They're used to having these racial slurs said to them, even if they know that it's not right. Unfortunately, it's the culture of gaming that causes gamers of color to understand that, oh, they probably don't mean that. Or do they? At the end of the day, that doesn't make it okay. That being said, when we think of non-POC individuals who use the N-word, it's fair to say we automatically assume that they're probably a little bit racist. Although, does this mean that's the case for everything in the gaming community? We're gonna talk a little bit about PewDiePie and his scandal in 2007. In 2007, while he was streaming and playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, You can hear in the original stream that after using the slur, he ends the comment with, "I don't mean that in a bad way." But does that actually carry any weight in comparison to the word that he used in the first place? I personally grew up as a really huge fan of PewDiePie, and it really hurt me to see someone that I looked up to for so long. I've never been a professional gamer and probably never will be, but I did look up to him because he was very funny, and his videos made me laugh the depression out of my body back then. But it still hurt me to see someone I looked up to possibly be a racist. I will give him, personally, from my point of view, the benefit of the doubt. He gave this as his apology, and this is kind of just an abridged version, shortened and sweet. "I said the worst word I could possibly think of. There are no excuses for it. I'm disappointed in myself because it seems like I've learned nothing. I'm just an idiot. But that doesn't make what I said or how I said it okay. It doesn't make it okay. I owe it to myself and my audience to do better than this because I know I'm better than this. I want to better myself, not just for me, but anyone looking up to me. In a world of Laura Lees, Jeffree Stars, Shane Dawson's, where we're so used to the Notes app, Twitter tweet apology, or the crying apology, or the, hey, you guys already know I'm a crazy, B word. You should know I'm used to doing bad stuff like this. I'm gonna apologize for the PR, but I don't actually mean it. But in comparison to Laura Lee, Jeffree Star, and Shane Dawson, I personally feel like it was a very respectful and accountable apology of PewDiePie to give out to his audience. He doesn't make his audience try to feel bad for him, and for this, I personally accept his apology as a fan of his who is a person of color. To dovetail off of that, I kind of want to look at this controversy in a different angle. What if the person in the video wasn't PewDiePie? What if it was someone who was a person of color who said this slur? What if there wasn't a face at all to put to the voice? What if the voice with no face happened to carry an AAVE or an African American vernacular English accent, or blaccent as is often referred to on the internet these days? If that were the case, would this still be an issue? If it was, how do we know? How do we know that this person is a person of color? Or how do we know that they're not a person of color? Isn't it wrong for us to assume that just because someone's voice sounds white, that they are white? My fellow people of color who are watching this video, we all know the voice that we use in phone interviews or even in in-person interviews that we use to help us get the job. But also, there are people of color or even Black people who grow up being told they sound white just because they talk differently than their other Black peers. Similarly, there are a lot of white people who talk about growing up in the environment, growing up around the word, and kind of forming themselves around this accent. How do we know they're not the ones behind the voice, not the ones behind the racial slur? These are not huge issues, and I recognize that, but they are issues that we do need to bring light to, because they do mean something and they do carry meaning. We have seen this within the past year or so with the rise of short form video content, such as TikTok. We've seen countless numbers of teens and kids, sadly, and even adults as well, using the blaccent or AAVE to their advantage, which is really odd to me, to their advantage to get a bigger following on TikTok and a really large audience, because apparently AAVE automatically equals the same thing as being funny. And those same creators who use AAVE or the blaccent, almost all of them have been caught red-handed in the past using the N-word in a negative connotation. So if we can see those people who are using that and we cancel them, what do we do with the people we don't see? How do we draw that line in the sand and say, hey, don't use this? It's kind of funny because a lot of the excuses that, the teenagers have made on TikTok as far as using the term and speaking in a blaccent is that they grew up with it and they grew up in that environment. And specifically, They all say the same thing about the word. They say that the N-word was used as calling each other's homie growing up. And I'm like, okay, would you call your homie that if you knew what the word stood for? I feel like anyone who is at least 16 should understand, or at least should have some foundational knowledge about the Civil War and then slavery for that sake. Understand where that word came from and understand the weight that it carries, and understand why Black people reclaim that word. When you decide to make yourself a public figure or influencer, it's more important now than ever to understand that you have to hold yourself so much more accountable than any average person walking down the street. You chose to put your face out there. You chose to use your voice. Just like I'm choosing to put my face out here, and I'm currently using my voice right now. If you're in a point in your life when you can choose and make your own decision to be a public figure or an influencer, you need to understand the repercussions and the weight that it carries to be that public figure, and understand the weight that it carries, especially for someone public like you, to use racial slurs or to use the N-word, and the weight that it carries for you to just compare it to the word homie. That's so disrespectful. That's extremely disrespectful. I'm sorry, but I hate that. Like, that is a horrible excuse. Yes, you may be young, and honestly, I don't think any person under the age of 18 should be a public figure on the internet. You may be young, you are still learning because you don't have all of your foundational knowledge yet, but it still doesn't make okay. It doesn't make it okay. To end this second subtopic about the intention, I do want to say I want to give a little bit more of opinion-based commentary here. I want to start with another question. So I'm asking these questions because I want you guys to comment, because I really want you guys to be interactive in the video. Do you think accountability with things such as the Black accent or African American vernacular English in gaming communities, or just online and social media in general, is too sensitive? And this video right here, which was made very, very well, I definitely recommend you watching it. It's been a really great source for this commentary that I'm making right now. It kind of takes a deep dive into this whole conversation about racism and racial slurs in the gaming community. And I'm just gonna take a couple quotes here that they've used. Gaming is not made for women, POC, or marginalized bodies. A lot of gamers of color normalize what happens to them. Terrence Miller, one of the Hearthstone pro players, has experienced a ton of racial slurs during tournaments before. And here's something that he's had to say about this.
Messages on Twitter and like Discord and stuff like that, everyone's like, all this stuff happened, like, are you okay? Like, I know my mom saw it for sure, and she didn't really understand like why they were like that at the time, and I just kind of had to like explain it to her.
At the tournaments and at the events, can you talk about your experiences there as a Black person? Is it way different than it is online?
It's definitely way different than it is online. Like, I've experienced no racism like whatsoever. People are anonymous on the internet, so like they're one way when you're not around, and then when they know that you're there, they're like more careful with what they say.
Is anonymity a driving factor? A lot of Black individuals use the N-word in their general speaking language with each other. This is how they reclaim their power for the word. But when they're the ones to face the repercussions when using it online because of anonymous and insufficient filtering on part of gaming host and developer companies, that's not really fair. It's really isolating, and it's not fair to people of color and Black people. And for the third and final topic of today, I want to talk about the impact of racial slurs and racism in the gaming community. To conclude this video, I think it's important to talk about the impact because of any lack of accountability that may or may not occur. As quoted above, companies like Microsoft may make efforts to try to filter racial slurs, but it doesn't take into account of any Black gamers who use the language every day. If anything, because they don't know how to refine this filter, this impacts Black gamers negatively. And like I said before, it makes them feel very isolated. On the bright side, we are lucky to have influential gamers with large fan bases to hold themselves accountable, such as PewDiePie. Speaking of PewDiePie, as of last year, in light of all the George Floyd protests and Black Lives Matter movement protest, he actually raised money for causes such as the Black Lives Matter movement, and for racial equality. Like I said, I think it's really important to recognize that, because him and his huge following, that leaves a really big impact, showing that he's supporting the Black community, not only for the fact that he's trying to hold himself accountable still, but hopefully that drives away any racist fans that he might has, to know that he's supporting us. And if it doesn't drive them away, hopefully it can help them really think about why they feel that way towards Black people, or just feeling racist at all. And lastly, on a concerning note, I do want to keep in mind that most of the masses in the gaming community happen to be impressionable youth. Kids, teenagers, they're probably the 80 to 90% that are on the gaming community, online gaming community anyways. I believe this makes it even more important to regulate and filter these racial slurs and racial discriminatory occurrences better, for the sake of the youth to continue leading a better example for future gamer generations to come. Lastly, I do want to say I am actually part of a closed Facebook group. It's called Urban Anime Lounge. I guess I'm gonna leave the link to all my sources below, but that'll also be included below. And basically, I kind of left a little bit of a poll there, kind of asking other members who are primarily Black and brown members, the question of, I asked them if they think we should eradicate the N-word altogether in the gaming community, or is it a little bit too sensitive to think that way? I got quite a bit of mixed responses, as far as they all pretty much came to agreement that they feel like it's too much part of their everyday vocabulary to get rid of it as a whole in the gaming community, and they're not going to stop using it whenever they're gaming, and I'm like, that's completely fair. But I do know most of them also felt that they wish there was some more regulation and filtering around it. So we're in this weird position at this point now where we can all recognize that there is a problem. It's just, how do we find the freaking solution to the problem in the first place? I don't know. If you guys think there's some solutions, you should comment about it. I'd be interested to see what you guys think. This was a really interesting topic for me, and I really had to I actually dug for a scholarly article for the statistics in the beginning. It's kind of sad that there's not more or older information about using racial slurs, and how it's still kind of like relatively a new issue in the gaming community, but still very present, still very much an issue, sadly, because America was built on the backs of slaves. Alright, so to conclude this video, I do just want to reiterate, this is a lot more research-based. It took me a little bit to kind of stitch everything together timeline-wise, but I hope it was easy to follow and it was interesting for you. It was definitely interesting for me to do all the research. A lot of it was also opinion-based, or just my kind of 2 cents on everything, and I hope that everything made sense in this video. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna edit a lot of it out, but I struggled so much to talk today because I've gone so long without doing a YouTube video, but I'm getting back on schedule again, so yeah. I also want to thank one of my best friends, RR. He actually brought this topic to my attention. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a really great topic, and he said you should make a video on it, so I'm like, that's what I'm gonna do. It took me a long time to move, but we did it, and I'm here. And RR, thank you so much for giving me really good content ideas, and I hope it lived up to your expectations. And as you know, please feel free to leave a comment below with any feedback or constructive criticism, please. That helps me a lot. I want to improve on this so much. I actually have a really big goal of being part of YouTube Black for 2022. That's basically kind of YouTube's recognition for Black creators, or growing Black creators in the platform, and I would love to be a part of that if you guys wouldn't mind supporting me. But yes, thank you so much for sticking around and watching the whole video. If you did, it really helps me out a lot if you guys are engaging with the video to help this channel grow. I think we're almost at 80 subscribers. It's super exciting. I really hope I can get to 100 subscribers by the end of March at the latest. So if you can help me get there, I would really appreciate it. But yeah, thank you for everything. Like, comment, subscribe, you know the dealio. And I'm just really happy you're here with me. And I hope you have a really great day. And I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.